I'm deeply fascinated by the way international fans negotiate authenticity of Korean cultural exports like K-dramas, K-pop, and K-beauty. It's not enough for a product or a piece of media to just be made in Korea, it also needs an additional seal of approval from Koreans to really be perceived as authentic enough. In online discussions about K-beauty, for example, you will find a lot of comparisons between products that are trending in Korea and products that are international bestsellers, almost implying that foreigners are buying the wrong thing. The search for authentic skincare gets further complicated when the same products are somehow sorted into both groups. Schrodinger's cleansing oil is simultaneously a high-quality authentic product and an overpriced gimmick depending on whether a Korean or a foreigner is buying it. The Koreanness of K-dramas is also constantly being questioned. There's a whole discourse about Netflix ruining Korean dramas and stripping away their culture, a topic I already discussed in one of my previous videos. Should K-dramas from foreign companies like Netflix and Disney Plus even count as real K-dramas? But at the same time, why are international fans deciding which Korean TV shows are Korean enough? K-pop fans have this problem too. They are preoccupied with music losing its Koreanness. Are songs written entirely in English still K-pop? Is K-pop trying too hard to appeal to Americans now? But how can K-pop get too Americanized when the whole industry is built on copying hip-hop and R&B in the first place? And it didn't even start in the 90s. We can trace the US influence on Korean music all the way back to the 1950s. At that time, Korea already had a music entertainment industry with agencies training young singers to become artists that entertain American soldiers. Modern Korean pop music developed from the direct cultural exchange with the black soldiers stationed in Korea. K-pop itself has almost no connection to the historical musical traditions of the country. International success of Korean music was possible because of how similar it is to the quote-unquote Western pop music that everyone in the world was already listening to. Turns out it is really hard to pin down what the K in K-pop actually is. And yet you would immediately recognize a distinct Korean style, even in groups that have no Korean members. International audiences are consuming Korean products that were intentionally designed for universal global appeal, but they don't want to feel like they're the target audience. To be truly authentic, a product has to be perceived as being for Koreans only. Ironically, fans are trying to gatekeep Korean culture from themselves. And my question is, what is happening here? Why are we talking about Korean culture like this? And who is we anyway? Korean media, originating from a small country with a unique language, is by definition foreign media that needs to be translated in order to be consumed anywhere else in the world. Translation is not completed when viewers turn on the subtitles though. The process continues when the audience interprets the content. Viewers discuss the media online in comment sections, explain it to each other, recontextualize what they saw, and create new frames of reference. They even upload their own content about K-dramas and actively engage with the material. You and me are both doing it right now. I am making a video about K-dramas, creating a new space for discussions. And you are watching this video, agreeing or disagreeing with me, forming your own opinions, leaving a comment with your thoughts. It's all part of a process that we collectively partake in as a community. Audiences who discuss K-dramas online are hard to pin down as a group. We come from all over the world, range in age and background, and most of the time, it's impossible to tell where the person is from just from reading their comment. Because of the anonymous nature of an online fandom, you never know who you're interacting with. Unless it's specified in the comment, you have no idea whether you're talking to a 12-year-old who couldn't point out Korea on a map or a 35-year-old who lived in Korea for a long time. And yet, both of these people are part of a community. The one thing that is pretty consistent within the fandom is gender. K-drama fans are mostly women. And I can confirm that on this channel, 86% of the audience is female. We also need to acknowledge that everybody within these fan communities perceives Korean media through a unique lens. For example, To white fans in Canada, consuming Korean media can be a sign of their progressive, open-minded, and multicultural worldview. Meanwhile, for diasporic Asians living in Canada, a lot of whom are not Korean, consumption of K-pop and K-dramas creates a pan-Asian identity and reconnects them to their cultural roots in a country that racializes and marginalizes them. A Muslim woman in Indonesia, a black woman in America, an indigenous woman in Brazil, a woman from a post-Soviet country, they all interact with Korean media within their unique geocultural and historical contexts. Unfortunately, English language discussions about Korea are often treated as if they're coming from an American perspective by default. Every once in a while, I get comments under my videos that dismiss my analysis as Americans pushing their woke agenda on Korea. And I would like to point out that I'm not American, and neither are most viewers on this channel. So before you accuse someone of being US-centric, ask yourself whether you're the one unconsciously centering the United States. In a really cool paper from 2013, Marion Schulze points out that most of the time, viewers interpret behaviors of K-drama characters as tropes, and don't rush to attribute everything as typically Korean. The audience understands the difference between South Korea, the country, and K-drama land, the imagined fictional world that exists in the collective imagination of writers, directors, actors, and viewers of K-dramas. K-drama land is the sum of narrative tropes, patterns, and cliches we see in Korean shows. A world that is governed by its own internal logic. When characters in a K-drama get hospitalized for any minor inconvenience, it's because the story needs a hospital scene to advance the plot, and not because it is a culturally significant practice for Koreans. A lot of fans hesitate to attribute a culturalist explanation and tend to first ask the online community whether something they have seen on TV was a K-drama thing or a typically Korean thing, so other fans can confirm or deny. But some viewers, especially the ones who position themselves as knowledgeable, sometimes directly attribute elements of K-drama land to Korean culture. This type of fan could argue that taking care of your body by going to a hospital for a minor problem is a Confucian value that is deeply important to Korean culture and should be considered a realistic plot point within the context of the Korean healthcare system. Confucianism is very commonly brought up in discussions in this community. It can be used as a blanket explanation for pretty much any aspect of Korean life, making it a pretty useless talking point to bring up. There's always someone in the comments saying, "This is a Confucianism thing, you wouldn't get it," making it a thought-terminating cliché, a way to dismiss the question and end the discussion without providing any useful insights. There's also a third group of fans that is more direct in labeling what they see in K-dramas as Korean. They assume that anything they don't understand must be a uniquely Korean practice, explained by the cultural gap. This type of fan might argue that, in their country, going to a hospital for a minor issue is not common, so this must be a Korean thing. But automatically attributing a culturalist explanation is usually met with resistance and is critically questioned by other commenters, who see it as interpreting K-dramas too literally. Korean culture is not constructed out of elements and images on screen, but through our collective reading of these images. It is an ongoing conversation in which meanings are constantly deconstructed and renegotiated. The majority of international K-drama fans are not Korean, don't speak the language, and have never visited the country. They can build up their knowledge in online discussions in which users, who position themselves as experts on Korean culture, can answer their questions and verify their interpretations of K-dramas. To be considered part of the community, you need a certain level of knowledge that can be gained by watching a lot of Korean shows, for example. Fans often categorize each other based on their first ever K-drama, using it as a marker of how long they've been watching. Those who started earlier are seen as more advanced within the fandom. Direct experience with Korean culture is considered even more valuable. This community has a hierarchy based on the amount of cultural and social capital its members have. The highest authority in this fandom is, unsurprisingly, held by Koreans themselves. Diasporic Koreans living in other countries are also considered expert. They can directly compare Korea with the country they live in and are uniquely qualified to explain the cultural differences to the rest of the community. Non-Koreans who live in Korea and speak the language can also give a lot of useful insights from their perspective. Fans who are majoring in Korean studies in university, fans who visited Korea before and have Korean friends, or fans who are learning Korean. They all have different levels of proximity to Korea that gives their contribution to the discussion credibility. The important part is to have first-hand lived experience of Korean culture through participation. In discussions about Korean media, a lot of users start their comments by explaining what qualifies them as experts. Mentioning how long you lived in Korea lends a lot of legitimacy to whatever you say afterwards. Or you could mention that a Korean friend verified your claim. Or you could give your YouTube channel a very academic-sounding name to appear extra smart and qualified. By the way, is anyone actually checking if I'm citing real papers, or do you just take my word for it? Clearly, respect for Korean culture and its authentic representation is very important to the K-drama community. Fans know they're outsiders and recognize that their knowledge is incomplete, which is why they need accurate information from credible sources. To preserve the integrity of this community, its members actively work to ensure that Korean culture is treated respectfully. Some non-Korean fans take this even further by actively defending and protecting Korea's reputation by engaging in fan nationalism. In recent years, K-drama and K-pop fans have replaced ethnic Koreans in performing nationalism beyond Korea's borders. Outsiders are now the ones who are promoting a positive national image of the country. But over-enthusiastic expressions of fandom are perceived as problematic by the community. This type of fan is often labeled as a Koreaboo. It is used as a derogatory term to describe people who are not of Korean descent, who are so obsessed with Korea they denounce their own culture. I found a lot of very different examples of behavior that gets people labeled with the term Koreaboo, but it always boils down to performing interest in Korean culture the wrong way. Koreaboos arguably don't respect the expert hierarchy of the community. They're not following the established code of conduct of the group. But what exactly are they doing to earn this dreaded label? One example of problematic behavior would be excessive use of Korean language in otherwise non-Korean contexts, especially by non-Korean speakers. We all collectively cringe when someone says stuff like, "Aigo, I 사랑해 my oppa very much." Talking like this unironically is considered 진짜 annoying, especially in situations where nobody else speaks Korean or listens to K-pop. A fan who adds random Korean words to every sentence is probably not learning the language seriously, but still wants everyone to think they are. Another sure way to get called out is to fetishize Koreans. There's a specific type of fan who thinks that K-dramas about hot virgin CEO male leads reflect the reality of dating Korean men. They imagine Korea as a magical faraway land where everybody looks like an idol or an actor, and then they project this fantasy on Koreans in real life. I'm not even going to open this can of worms today because I want to make a whole separate video about this. The K-pop and K-drama community has informal mechanisms in place to maintain checks and balances, ensuring that interactions with Korean culture remain respectful. Labeling someone as a Koreaboo serves as a form of self-regulation that reinforces community standards. Fans tend to distinguish themselves from the obsessive delusional Koreaboos by positioning themselves as the informed and culturally aware ones. They are concerned about the extreme fans tarnishing the reputation of the whole community, so they monitor each other to protect the community from itself. However, we should be careful when mocking overly enthusiastic fans. The term Koreaboo was coined to degrade the American K-pop fandom as a whole. Making fun of the weird fans and their abnormal cultural interests essentially mocks the idea of liking anything Korean in general, and is also quite racist towards Koreans, as if their culture is something to be embarrassed by. Paradoxically, by distancing themselves from the Koreaboo label, international fans think they are engaging with Korean culture in an anti-racist way. But by doing this, they actually reinforce the imperial Eurocentric cultural dominance that places itself above the inferior Asian countries. I'm not saying we should let Koreaboos go unchecked, but maybe we should get down from the high horse and really think about what it is we're mocking. So far, we have analyzed the bottom-up spread of the Korean wave by international fans. But the global rise in popularity of Korean media is not exactly an organic grassroots movement. It is also the result of a deliberate top-down strategy which the South Korean government has been actively shaping and funding for several decades. For a long time, international reputation of Korea was dominated by images of the Korean War, the division into two countries, and North Korea's threats to the stability of the region. South Korean government was looking for a way to improve this image and rebrand itself as a modern and reliable business partner. With democratization in the 90s, the cultural sector saw deregulation in content, finally giving artists and filmmakers freedom of expressions and space for creativity. Since the 1997 IMF crisis, South Korean government has prioritized pop culture exports as a key economic strategy. As a small country with limited natural resources and growing competition from China in manufacturing, Korea shifted its focus to exporting cultural products. The government started actively supporting the development of creative industries with attractive tax breaks and grants, which allowed production companies to price their products competitively in the international market and helped transform Korean cultural exports into a sustainable source of income. South Korean government has a number of agencies specifically dedicated to Korea's cultural export strategy. In 2001, the Korea Culture and Contents Agency, KOCCA, was established. In 2009, the Presidential Council on Nation Branding was founded. Then there's also the Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism, established in 2008. There were also various pan-cultural ministry initiatives such as the Korean Wave Promotion Task Force. Since the mid-2000s, the Korean Wave policy has grown into a complex networks of planning, funding, marketing, branding, training, events, and networking, involving numerous government actors both domestically and abroad. Every presidential cabinet since the 90s has consistently prioritized and actively supported the global reach of Korean cultural exports. In the late 2000s and early 2010s, the government rebranded almost all exports with a K prefix. K-literature, K-fine art, K-food, K-beauty, K-fashion, K-whatever you're willing to spend money on. Cultural policy in Korea is increasingly driven by international consumer demands and market trends. The outsider's view of Korea is now feeding the country's understanding of its own identity. In a quest for authenticity, the transnational fan community somehow became the arbiters of Korean culture. While Korean government is trying to export their products for worldwide consumption by catering to the target audience's taste, international fans are trying to gatekeep K-exports, insisting on keeping the Korean entertainment industry a small intimate circle only meant for domestic consumption and a select few foreigners who are sophisticated enough to appreciate the culture. The spread of the Korean wave is a complex process that involves a lot of different actors who are managing huge investments and political decisions that are far beyond the reach of individual fans. Maybe we don't need to carry the burden of micromanaging how everyone interprets our favorite movie or feel personally responsible for protecting Korea's honor. Korean culture is not that fragile. It is not going to be ruined just because fans on the other side of the planet watch and discuss a K-drama. Koreans are actively sharing their culture with the world because they want to, and we should be able to appreciate the art without overcomplicating it. If you want to support Korea and feel closer to it, you could always turn on your comfort K-drama and put on a hydrating face mask. One of the good ones, of course. The kind Koreans actually use.